Discover new opportunities together in a new Chevy. Meet up in an Equinox, winner of the J.D. Power Award for initial quality among compact SUVs. Lend a hand in the strong and capable Silverado, or mix it up in a high-tech Trax with an available 11-inch diagonal touchscreen. Find family, friends, and fun in the Chevy that's right for you. Click to learn more. Chevrolet, together let's drive. For J.D. Power 2023 U.S. Initial Quality Study Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Hello, I'm Wendy, and this is Wendy's Coffee House. Animal Medicine, a Curanderismo guide to shapeshifting, journeying, and connecting with animal allies. This is the shamanic realm. My guest, Erika Buenaflor, and she has a master's degree in religious studies with a focus on Mesoamerican shamanism from the University of California at Riverside, also a practicing curandera for 20-some years. How did she get started? Well, it might have been a straight line, but there was a detour.
After not walking for almost a year, I walked with a completely normal gait in less than 2 weeks after my last surgery. That's when I really had to assess, to really evaluate and reassess my life and where I was going and to stop. It was a process.
Your book, Animal Medicine, gives a whole different spin with, I think, a greater awareness beyond the animal messages to the shamanic animal integration and working with the spirit animal traveling, journey, and all that. So I just want to set that up. And thank you for talking with me. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Wendy. I'm really excited about this.
I like the background that you start with because there's a law background here. Also, economic globalization and marrying that with Curanderismo. And okay, how did that happen? Because that's a really interesting juxtaposition.
Well, I mean, the Curanderismo is definitely something that comes from my background, my family. Something that is very common in Latinx communities. That we have, we do something called the egg limpia, a huevo. Like yes. We use the egg to do limpia. So it's like it just passed on. Those things haven't gone away. And using herbs for healing and different things. So that was definitely already embedded in me. And then the aspect of understanding economic globalization in terms of Curanderismo and how I pitched it to one of my teachers way back in the days, in another lifetime in my undergrad years, was basically understanding how transnational globalization is affecting on a micro level communities and practices, spiritual practices such as Curanderismo. So it was like they were very intrigued. So they're like, okay, yeah, go ahead, study about Curanderismo. Yeah, we can't wait to hear your paper. So it was good because it allowed me to pursue it on an academic level and be really diligent and give me access to records that are a little hard to get. A lot of codices are a little bit more difficult to get when you can get them at university levels, libraries and whatnot, that they have a lot of just great access to a lot of wonderful resources. And then that continued on in my grad years as well.
Well, you also have that in the book, tremendous footnotes. I mean, the book is just full of references, and you go back into the Maya practices and different shamanic practices. And the book, continuing Animal Medicine, the Curanderismo Guide to Shapeshifting, Journeying, and Connecting with Animal Allies. I wanted to bring back, before we turn the microphone on, the image I had when I was reading your book, and I asked for, okay, what animal is calling to me? And I got an image of a white peacock, and I thought, okay, I'll look in the book. And I wait, there's no white peacock. So then I open your webpage, and there in this royal beauty is this very, very gorgeous peacock. I thought, okay, well, you're on board. Okay, so there we are. There's a peacock somewhere. But that's the thing about this is it doesn't have to be specific. It can be. There's also a pelican, which is white. But it's that sense of, okay, do I have an ally? And how am I aligned with this energy? So what do you do when people do have that kind of connection? And it isn't in a book anywhere, but it's their personal animal, their personal shamanic calling. How do you deal with that?
Well, I do address it in the first part of the book and developing symbolic communication. And I provide very simple, very practical, I should say, not simple, but very practical steps in terms of accessing and developing communication and doing various things such as automatic writing, developing our intuition with energy surges and understanding the different clairs, doing dream work. So I have a list of different things that we can do to learn to develop symbolic communication with our animal guides, regardless if they're in the book or not. Because the animals that I focus on in the book are the animals that were most prevalent in Mesoamerican codices and artwork, and that we have the knowledge and rituals and practices. So those are the animals that I focused on.
And I love
there were 76.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're different than the ones we have here in North America. So it's nice to see the diversity.
Well, a lot of them are, we have dogs.
Okay, fine. Yes, dogs are everywhere.
We have wolves. We have a lot of the animals. There's maybe like a few that are specific to the region, but
the peccary. Okay.
Yeah,
he might be a little divergent.
But a lot of them are very, very common to everywhere. They're domestic animals in a lot of parts of the world.
When you were beginning, you were fast tracking on a different direction, and then you went hiking. And so let's go back into that, because that also gives people an idea of how you finally got basically seated in the job that you're doing. And it wasn't intentional. It was like you had to fall off a cliff to do it.
Well, basically, in law school, I met my first two mentors. But it was synchronistic. It's just very synchronistic. I met my first two mentors, and one of my first mentors that gave me a limpia, which is the shamanic cleanse. He looked at me and he's like, "Oh, because I was telling him, and he said, you're a curandera, a shamanic healer." And I said to him, "Okay, that's nice, but I'm going to law school."
Yeah. Okay. Excuse me.
Yeah. So, but the thing is that it just something that I just kept getting pulled to go. So about every 4 to 6 months, I was going there and I studied with them. I did that for about 7 years. And then I was already working as an attorney, and I was continuing my practice as a curandera and mentorship. And I was taking other classes here in the States. And, I was basically living two lives. Then one time I was hiking, and I did a very deep journey, and I didn't ground myself after the journey, and because I realized, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be late I'm going to miss my flight. And I just jumped up, and I just wasn't grounded, and I fell off a cliff. I woke up being airlifted with a skull fracture, brain hemorrhage, left AC dislocated, 2 vertebrae in my back fractured. I completely shattered my coccyx. Left leg, I fractured in 3 places. Right leg, knee down, all of my bone shattered and came out of my heel. And then 6 weeks later, I got severe osteomyelitis, which is an infection of the bones, and lost half the bones in my right ankle. And they told me it was very unlikely that if I walked again, it was going to definitely be with some kind of assistance. And because my coccyx was shattered, I'd be in pain the rest of my life. And I was in a wheelchair for almost a year, but during that time, I put into practice everything that I had learned from my first 2 mentors. And after not walking for almost a year, I walked with a completely normal gait in less than 2 weeks after my last surgery. That's when I really had to really evaluate and reassess my life and where I was going, and to stop, just it was a process. It's a very, very long process that's involved in a lot of these traditions too, especially because it's so personal to a lot of women of color and indigenous people, and that a lot of these practices they're still very much colonized. So there's still a lot of disdain within families in terms of, us, younger generations heading towards more indigenous practices. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't something that like my family was like, "Oh, you're going to leave your practice to be an attorney and be a curandera? Awesome."
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of families would necessarily be for it, but especially because there's just an element of a lot of racism still. Yeah, especially in Mexico, and a lot of in the families of, against indigenous people, they're idolized, but it's something that is far and away.
That's so sad, because there are so many practices and just beliefs that bind you to the earth and to the soil, to the plants, to the trees, to the environment, and those are crucial if we want to go forward. Absolutely,
and it's so important because there's so many people on antidepressants now, and there's so many ways, natural, holistic ways of working with herbs, with plants, with just natural ways of healing ourselves that are just so much more conducive and healthy and don't have, a list of side effects.
You were going for an interview at a law firm. I love the story about the crow. Can you share that?
So it was very interesting because I developed a really wonderful relationship with crows. And there was a time where I got to an interview for a law firm, and this was a while back, and I had a family of crows literally blocking my way to go into the door. And they were being rude. As I was like, oh, all right, guys, I need to get inside. So they were like they were moving with me, as I was walking up, but they weren't getting out of my way. And I had one crow come over and leave me a kernel. Like, this is a message to you. We're trying to get your attention. And I just knew there was something. During the interview, it went well. They offered me the job, and I knew there was something they were trying to tell me. So when I got home, and I've never ever done this where I went for an interview and I went and I investigated the law firm, but I found out that the law firm had been involved in some shady things on real estate, and one of the main partners actually got disciplined by the California State Bar. So I was like, okay, thank you, crows.
Yeah, red flag, thanks. That little kernel was really good. But see, I wanted to bring that up because for anyone who is, right now doing the 9 to 5 or doing something where they can't practice this full time, they don't have to change their life. They can bring pieces of it in to help give them a stronger sense of listening to their own intuition and finding ways to make it a regular practice. And that's what you're offering.
Absolutely. And that's a big focus in my book, the first part. And then, the other part, the second part where I focus on the animals, I also integrate all that information in terms of the medicines that they have, because there's also energetic and spiritual medicines that they have, and ways that we can begin to work with them in our day-to-day lives, that they can give us symbols, they can give us communication, they can give us guidance like, hey, be careful, there's an accident there.
Well, there was one a client that was worried about owls because she, in her culture, owls were, that's the death sign. And so when she was seeing owls, and white owls, which to me that's a message. Again, like the white peacock, there's a message that goes with that. And so you helped her by giving her a different direction with that.
Yes, she had come to me. She had come to me with it got to a point in her life where she had a really bad accident. And she came to me with mainly for what's called Curanderismo, which is, it's a shamanic, like acupressure, massage, like cleanse, right? Because she was having a lot of issues with her back. So we did that. And then she scheduled, she was like, I think I need a soul retrieval session. And that was something that, she just wasn't living happy. She wasn't happy. And the accident just made it worse because now she was in pain. She was at home. She wasn't working. The insurance company was giving her the runaround. And one of the things, and she kept telling me that she kept, coming across owls. And she was very, very scared, because she's Armenian. And she just said, in our culture, that's the death. Am I going to die? And I said, no, honey. So I started giving her another perspective, because in Mesoamerica, the owl was very much associated with the underworld. And that's another thing too, I explained, because there's gifts in the different realms, the non-ordinary realms that animals are connected to, that they bring medicine for us. And the medicine that the owl was bringing to her and was offering for her, she was going to a space of the underworld where she was going to be tested. It was also an opportunity at the same time. The underworld had both aspects of, working with our shadow aspects, but at the same time, there was an opportunity for rebirth, for growth, for revitalization. And that was something that the owls could help with. So, so I guided her, to start connecting with the owl and to create an altar for the owl. And she just developed a very, very different relationship. And fast forwarding, when she was going to be taken, she had her deposition because she had filed a lawsuit in the accident. And, the night before, she had seen an owl fly over her. it was like, okay, that's not too unusual, but she knew that the owl was like giving her strength, like, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. But then in like the middle of the day, and this is something that she told me, she told me that she was driving to the deposition, and in the middle of the day, she swears that as she was driving on the freeway, she saw a huge, beautiful white owl fly over her. And that day after her deposition, the case settled, favorably on her side. She was super happy, and she just became a very different person, and she just became very open to animal guides, just generally, and a different perspective. So it's really beautiful when the animals come forward and can provide us medicine from different realms as well.
And you talk earlier about shapeshifting, and there's a trip that you take with I believe he wasn't your husband, your boyfriend at the time, and became the husband. I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head, but he was having an issue with really being solid in who he was, and you were having a joint journey here. And can you explain how that worked? Because this is still a foreign concept, because you're traveling out of body together with someone intentionally, and you're able to do that, integrate it, remember it, know what happened. Okay, right now you're changing all sorts of or blowing minds, because for you this is natural, and it's a part of what you do and what you train and help and assist others to do on their own journeys.
Well, it's something that is still, it's actually still not, in a lot of indigenous communities, especially in Mexico and Guatemala, there's still pockets where shapeshifting is somewhat common and not unheard of. Mm-hmm. And it's not, and when I say shapeshifting, and I do point this out in my book, that there's different kinds of shapeshifting. There's shapeshifting where we work in meditative spaces, where we're working with our etheric bodies, our energy bodies, the auric fields around our body, and we shapeshift. And when we shapeshift into animals, we get medicine from them as well. They go into our imprints, into our physical body as well, which can be, very liberating and healing and medicinal. And then there's also astral shapeshifting as well. We can actually go into different realms. And this is something that one of my mentors had an experience and shared with me too, that he was actually able to get one of his divination tools, like physical divination tools, in an astral realm. And then of course there was a physical shapeshifting that's still used. That's still, people still hear of it. Many families, and especially the Latinx communities that have families that still live in Mexico, it's not something that's unheard of. And then that was something that was more common during the colonial times, was basically bilocation, where someone can be in their physical body and be an animal at the same time and be very present. And something that the indigenous people understood, and they still do, is that it requires a lot of what's known as soul energies. And they're concentrated in different parts of the body, where when we have more energy, we can shift. We can experience life and see life as an animal and get medicine and understanding as the animal. So that's one of the things that I talk about too, in terms of, basically understanding that in shifting, what that requires is basically raising your energy. And I have different ways of doing that with etheric shapeshifting, with actual shapeshifting, and it's concentrated in 3 parts of the body, and things that we can do to raise and work those energies and to balance our energies. And it's also really good just for overall purpose and having more strength and vision and not being tired at the end of the day. It's good to be able to understand our own energy in our body too. And that's something that animals are very aware of too. They're much more primal in the sense that they understand their energies, and they know it's like, okay, it's time to nap.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. See you. Bye. Yeah. And all of a sudden they're asleep on your foot.
It's something that, and we're not necessarily on that rhythm. We're not so used to listening to our bodily rhythms. Yeah. So it's something that I have suggestions for if people, because a lot of people have 9-to-5 jobs and have different things going on. So I have a lot of different ways of raising those soul energies in our body. So if we want to have an experience and understand and go to different realms and see things with animals, I suggest different ways of doing that.
The book is Animal Medicine. It includes an A to Z directory of 76 spirit animals, and it also is the Curanderismo guide to shapeshifting, journeying, and connecting with animal allies. So we're going to come back and talk about what it would be like to shapeshift into a specific animal. Back in a few with my guest, Erika Buenaflor. Website, realizeyourbliss.com. Wendy's Coffee House.
Nice buns, soft, fluffy, and ultra-low net carbs. Discover Hero Bread, the delicious ultra-low net carb bread with incredible taste and texture. Hero Bread has 0 grams of sugar and is under 100 calories per serving. Plus, high in fiber with 5 to 10 grams of protein per serving. Available on Amazon.com, Walmart.com, and at hero.co. That's HERO.co. Delicious, ultra-low net carb Hero Bread, buns and tortillas. Soft and fluffy, high in fiber, and with 0 grams of sugar, up to 10 grams of protein, coming in at under 100 calories. Order today at hero.co and use the code AH10 to get 10% off your first purchase. That's AH10 at hero.co. HERO.co. Order from hero.co now and get 10% off your first purchase with promo code AH10. That's 10% off with code AH10. HERO.co.
Being able to go and journey with an animal in these non-ordinary realms is just really spectacular when we want to get medicine and we feel like maybe we're going for a dark night of the soul and we could use a little help from an animal guide that's associated with the Underworld.
Wendy's Coffee House, my guest, animal medicine author, Curanderismo Guide to Shapeshifting, Journeying, and Connecting with Animal Allies, Erika Buenaflor. And I want to share my own experiences. One is a dream of a cat. And this is a dream. I'm aware I'm in the dream. But in the dream, I'm also aware that I am a cat. And I'm a tabby, and I'm in a box. And this is like an awakening, a realization that, wow, cats have it great. This is wonderful. In that box, I could feel the warmth. I could feel just completely like I'm in the womb. It's just like that thing of complete, total relaxation, not a care in the world. So that was that moment of cat energy. And so I wake up with that, knowing, okay, this is a very real presence of that cat. And then the other one, I'm giving you just a couple to give a juxtaposition here. The other one, I'm in the car, and I'm kind of zoning out. I'm a passenger, so I'm not driving, but I'm, and it's just very relaxed and in between, not meditating, but in that kind of hypnagogic state where you're in between. I'm looking out at the horizon and watching the fields, and there's a fence, and I'm looking at the fence post, and a hawk comes in and lands on the fence post. As that hawk is in the act of landing, just making that last minute lift up to perch, I'm the hawk. And I feel my body. I feel inside my chest, my lungs, I don't have talons, but I feel that sense of putting my feet on the post and landing. But the minute I did that, then I shifted back to my body. And I thought, and that was at one of those oh wow moments that, could I do that again? Because that was a separation of actually being in that physical form and realizing, this is something that we all have access to. It's a matter of knowing there are some cultures that really cherish and feel much more connected and offer guidance to this instead of considering it, okay, that happened once and it never should happen again because that means you're weird. All right? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yes.
So with your culture, you have the benefit of that acceptance and that heritage and the lineage that says this is okay, this is part of who we are, and connecting us to a greater awareness of how important our animal allies are.
Yes, and it's something, it's just wonderful to be able to experience the full breadth of life and doing it by connecting with our animal guides and becoming them as well.
It makes you want to protect them, I think. I think it makes you want to make sure that they're okay, just like we are okay. And you're more appreciative of the environment and needing to be conscientious about the kind of stuff we do that might be destructive to habitat all across the board.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And understanding how we are connected to them as well.
Now,
and experience life through their eyes as well.
When you're working with a client and you're helping them make a journey or connect with their ally, the next step beyond that, because I know there's other things you do, the mudras, where you have your hand positions, where you connect certain energy points to help up the energy. And I'm just using the terms I would use. It doesn't mean that that's the science way of doing it or what you put in your book. But the way I understand it is to help increase the energy, the vibration, so you can give yourself a boost and have more awareness in journeying. Did I totally butcher that?
No, that's absolutely what it is. It's because usually when any kind of meditative work requires energy. That's why a lot of the time people go to sleep. When it's meditation, it's like, oh, I can't stay awake, because it actually requires more energy than it is when we're operating on many states of consciousness at those spaces and at those times. So that requires more energy for us to be aware and stay aware.
And hold the presence, yes. Yeah. Yeah, you're working, and people think meditation and you just say one word forever and ever and that's it, and it's really boring. No, that's not it. If you do that, it's like, no, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. That one word is to get you out of lockstep and into a different vibration and frequency, so that eventually that word doesn't even exist and you're in the zone. And with you, there's another way. There's also automatic writing, but there's other ways of doing this to help you get outside the box and start being more connected with what your body is doing and how to separate. I love the fact that you healed yourself and you went back into your own being, essence, and said, okay, I am not the diagnosis. You fell off a cliff, and that's a huge energy shift of when you said, am I going to do this and carry it forward, or am I going to be who I am? And for me, that was your soul saying, okay, kiddo, time to get on the plan. You've had fun being a law student, but now, or a practitioner, but now let's get the real stuff out and show people what you can do, and that's what you're doing now.
Yes, I hope so. Yes. I sure hope so. Yes.
Right, well, I assume you have about 4 or 5 more books in you. Okay, you promised books. I was looking at your video, and it's like, okay, this is the book, that's the other book, and I'm assuming there are more. But it's not just the books. You also offer the YouTube channel when you did a demonstration for the Olympias.
Yes, I have. I know there's also classes too. Actually, animal medicine classes that I do that we actually go through shapeshifting, and they can be done in person and remotely as well. One of them is happening this Sunday, as a matter of fact. But yeah, there's to actually help people to connect to, and I have people do things like different types of movement as well, because movement is very important to raise energy and to then go into a meditative state. So I walk them through, this is how it's done. And they experience it and they tell me, oh my God, I had this journey and then I saw this animal and I became this animal and I saw this medicine, and it's helping people to have like just the physiological and the meditative, bringing those worlds together and guiding them through that. So I always do that in my classes. There's always an element, because even in a lot of the codices, and this is the codices, the books of the ancient Mesoamerican, the Maya, the Central Mexican people, a lot of the Mixtec tradition, Mixtec tribes, a lot of them, they have the breath, a big focus on the breath and breath work during ceremonial practices. Even mudras, hand postures, are very common throughout a lot of the codices, Maya and Central Mexican, and that was actually a way of communication as well, along with going into ceremony and going into different trance states. So it's basically it's not just, this wasn't just done in the East, but this was done here in the Americas with a lot of indigenous people. And I guide people through that in a lot of the classes and workshops that we do. So they can experience it themselves, and they could just be like, wow, this can be done. This is not so out of reach.
You get into the differences between the upper world, the middle world. Can you explain how that works?
So basically, what was understood is that the animals were connected to different non-ordinary realms. So when you had an animal guide that, for example, the upper world provide medicine of ancestral guidance, wisdom, playfulness, joy, resurrection. And when you wanted to tap into that medicine, maybe you wanted to connect with an ancestor, is you would connect with an animal that could be connected to the upper world. And it was basically, they looked at animals' basic traits, habitats, where they were at, what they would do. So, for example, monkeys that could fly high in trees, they were associated with the upper world as well as the middle world. So that they could have different associations with the realms. And there were birds, that could fly. So they were connected to the upper world. Like, for example, like the hummingbird. The hummingbird was believed to give off donali, soul energy from the sun, and was very much an upper world animal. Then there was the middle world, and the middle world animal was associated with bounty, with fertility. So animals that could make a lot of babies.
Yeah.
We're very much associated with the middle world. So if you wanted to connect to maybe like the medicine of the middle world is very much connecting to past lives, or for example, if you want to do soul retrieval work, connect to a part of your soul piece that has been traumatized and go to a different time and space, and you would connect with an animal from the middle world that would guide you into this realm, right? Mm-hmm. And would also locate that soul piece. And then the underworld, as I had mentioned, the underworld is very much a space of, that's where we work with our shadow aspects. There's trials, tribulations, and the underworld are animals that could go in the water, that could also go in between spaces. And in my book, every animal I describe both, I have a little description of, some of the mythologies associated with them in Mesoamerica, like the artwork where they were in, some of the beliefs were about that animal. And then I also indicate their spiritual and shape-shifting medicine. So in case people do want to experience life as that animal, what is the medicine that animal has to offer, as well as the non-ordinary realms that they're associated with. So there's also a chapter that describes what's the medicine of these non-ordinary realms. What can we go and what do these non-ordinary realms look like and feel like, and how can we experience them? So there's that. And then it also has this basic, what are some of the spiritual symbolism when we see those animals in dreams or in journey spaces. So being able to go and journey with an animal in these non-ordinary realms is just really spectacular when we want to get medicine and we feel like maybe we're going for a dark night of the soul and we could use a little help from an animal guide that's associated with the underworld. It could be it could be like a caiman, a crocodile, or it could be an ant even too. That's an in between space, because sometimes there's messages that they have too. Like when we see, usually it's when they're doing something that's a little bit out of the ordinary. But for example, like all the crows coming right in front of me and like blocking my way. Or the story that I shared with the owl flying over my client in the middle of the day, that's a little bit unusual. So there's definitely a message there.
Yeah.
There's definitely a message there. So that all that information there is there in the book.
This is something you alluded to earlier, soul retrieval. And that can be crucial for some people when they're having a crisis of some kind and not knowing which way is up and where to go. And you mentioned earlier the woman that you suggested a soul retrieval. So can you explain what that is? So
the soul retrieval is like when we have a trauma, our soul energy basically is like, okay, I'm going to go somewhere, a non-knowing realm, because I need to get medicine, because I'm not getting it from you. This is too much. So a piece of our soul energy leaves. And animals are amazing because a lot of animals, they just have amazing instincts and can find those pieces in those different realms and can act as our guardians, as our protectors. Like if there's been, for example, a soul theft, someone took our soul energy. So, I've had instances of working with clients where there was somebody who was experiencing so basically a molestation from this gentleman that her mother had married, and I use that term loosely, gentleman. So one of her animal guides, the bear came in and basically broke her out of a closet that she was in and just took off with her.
Yeah.
Like, we're getting out of here.
Yeah. Yeah, the power.
Exactly. It was, so, I mean, animals are just amazing at that as well, to help us to go into these, because our soul pieces are in these non-ordinary realms. So animals can help us find those soul pieces and guide us to them.
Some of this is foreign territory in Western belief systems. And so hearing it takes a while to integrate it, let alone, understand just basically why this helps and how it helps. Because sometimes it's like you get the help and you realize, oh my gosh, I didn't think it would be that easy. And so a part of this is that it's beyond language. It's beyond language. And that's why you use some of the things you talk about, the sound. And I believe you have on your property, you set up an area that you do sound work. And that is primal.
Yeah.
That's primal when you work with sound.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, because it gets you out of the busy mind.
And I think we take that for granted, that you have to find a time to make for yourself to allow this to work. And it doesn't have to take 50 years. It can take 5 seconds. And if you meditate 10 minutes, you're doing it because you're training your mind to get out of lockstep. I use that term just because it's easy for me to refer to it. Everybody who has a 9 to 5, it's a lockstep. You know what's going to happen next. Nothing changes. It can be extremely monotonous. But breaking that security, that known, can sometimes be a real challenge.
And even when it is a huge challenge, I have clients who are, professionals and they're just like, I don't have time to meditate. I don't like to meditate, and that's fine. So what I did, and this is also similar with my client who had a connection with an owl. She just didn't know about meditation and wasn't really interested in it. I had her build an altar because animals are very intuitive. So they sense when we're trying to connect to them. They will also come and court us as well. And they sense when we're trying to court them. So if we put an item of theirs on an altar and maybe we sing a song or a prayer to them, they get it. Mm-hmm. Animals are incredibly intuitive. All animals, wild, domestic, just very intuitive. So it doesn't necessarily have to be meditation, but as I, indicate in my book, there's various ways that we can connect to our animals. And I offer many ways of doing that, depending on, people's likings and predilections and all that good stuff.
I love the peacock on your website. Okay, just that was it was such a shock. I'm like, okay, why am I getting a white peacock? Okay, it's not in the book. I'll have to go somewhere else. I can understand what that's about. And then I opened the website. I'm like, oh, I should have known. But you are very colorful in your beautiful white dress with the all of the emblems on it with the different colors. I thought, you know what? That's you beside the other colorful peacock. That's you. You are the one there with the grace and the eloquence and that beautiful, beautiful voice. You just have such a glow about you. I thought, well, maybe I had it wrong. It wasn't about the animal. It was about the being that carries that energy.
Oh, thank you. That's so, so sweet. The peacock has a very special place. And, I have some animals that are sad, why didn't they make it in your book? The cricket being one of them. I have a cricket in my Curanderismo. They're just why weren't we in your book? I'm like, I'm so sorry. I love you guys.
Yes. Well, then you have room to make another book with a different kind of presentation, okay? These are the ones I save for the best, the best for last. The real power. But that's part of it. It's like, okay, there's a reason there are so many animals because there are so many places where different animals exist and we connect with those in our area. And so, that's part of what you were saying, Mesoamerica, these are the ones that were important in their cultures. And that's part of who we are, is being able to connect in our area and beyond that to join us as a global citizenship to protect all of the animals and say they're all important and necessary. RealizeYourBliss.com, that's your website. You teach classes. Anything else that I have overlooked that you'd like to add?
I definitely encourage people to keep it practical. Start with practical, something that they can commit to. You know, in terms of building a relationship with animals, keep it practical and then work from there.
And find the joy, because that's what you do. I mean, you're just full of it. And so just hearing your voice on the phone, there's so much energy and enthusiasm. It's obvious you love what you do, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. I do.
And thank you for talking with me. The book, Animal Medicine, A Curanderismo Guide to Shapeshifting, Journeying, and Connecting with Animal Allies. Okay, we just glossed over it. All right, you have to do the homework and actually read the book and then pick your animal and go for it. Erika Buenaflor, realizeyourbliss.com. That's the website. I'm going to put some links in the show description so you can check that out, including the link to her introduction, her website, and then my blogs. And thanks for listening.